All right. Well, welcome to this. I guess it's not an official podcast or interview. It may turn into an official podcast, but Tim, you're the first guest I've had on besides doing some with Tidius. So to introduce Tim real quick, Tim is an ATP rated captain at the airlines. He's a CFI, CFII, and MEI, and he is the teacher, the instructor on the Pilot Essentials course, which is a private pilot written course. Am I missing anything there for aviation credentials?
No, it sounds good.
How are you doing?
Oh, doing good. Yeah, it's been a long week. We're working hard on Pilot Essentials course, and we're winding it up here, and it's getting real exciting to see a lot of the finished product. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be really good.
Yeah, I'm excited. I was looking at the videos last night. Me and Tim are given final word when they're ready for the course. I'm making sure that everything's up to par. And just looking through them, I'm like genuinely intrigued and like actually enjoying watching the videos. So I was really, really pleased with that. Sweet. Well, I've got some different questions for you, and I figured it would be really neat to have you on here and you being an airline pilot and the process that you've gone through. I think that a lot of people could benefit from hearing your experience. So to start off, what inspired you to be a pilot in the first place?
For me, it was my grandfather had been in World War II. He was a navigator on a B-17. And then after the war, he became a pilot and he owned his own private aircraft. And then my aunt was also a pilot. She was a commercial pilot. That kind of got me interested a little bit. The thing that really stuck out to me is when I was 10 or 12, I went and visited a museum in California, and they had Nate Saint's plane sitting there. So that's how I became interested.
Yeah, very cool. Who's Nate Saints?
So Nate Saint he was a missionary pilot to South America, I think what it was, and he and a group of other young men, I think there's about five of them, went to reach out to a new tribe, never met any outsiders, never heard anything, nothing, and so they went and tried to minister to them. I can't remember the time frame, but they were eventually killed by the native, and it was a really neat story. After that, some other missionaries came in behind them at some point in time, and they were actually able to minister, and they won the tribe over for Christ. And so it
Wow.
was really neat to see that story and kind of read along and follow Nate as he shared a little bit of his experience in reading the book of how he was able to fly the missionaries in, supplies, try to make contact with the people there with his flying ability. So
Wow.
really neat.
Yeah, that's amazing. Was he part of the missionary, is it MAF?
He was, yeah. I think there were actually two groups. He was part of the aviation ministry, and then the other four guys were part of a different organization, but they were paired together to minister to this one tribe. So
Wow, very cool. Would you share as well just kind of your process? Like, how did you become a pilot? What's been your journey from, what you're saying, what got you into it? So from that point to now today being a captain at an airline, what's gone on in between there?
sure. About 20 years ago, I started my aviation journey. I got my private pilot license in about 3 years, and then just life happened. Of course, the economy collapsed around 2010, and it wasn't until about 2015 I was able to start flying again. My whole family moved. We moved to Texas to be part of an ATP program. I started with my private. I had credit for private, and so I just jumped right into instrument training. And from there, it was basically nonstop for about 7 months. And I got all my ratings, my instrument, my commercial, and then my CFIs and MEIs and double I. After that, I was able to instruct right away at the location that I was hoping to instruct at. I instructed there for about a year and a half, gaining experience and, of course, hours. I was a lead flight instructor for about a year. And then after that, I went right into the airlines and currently and have been with the same regional carrier that I've been with for the last little over 6 years now. And of course, at the time, I think they still do it now. You can go in and get your ATP with the regional carriers, and so
Mm.
that's how I became a captain. I had a family, and I had a mortgage, and so I had to get done real quick. And so the route that I took, while I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, it was good for me personally because it got me through my training very quickly, and it got me paid flying and bring in some money for the bills until I could eventually make it to the airline. So all in all, coming in with credit for private, it took me about just a couple months over 2 years, maybe about 25, 26 months or something to complete it from start to finish with already having private. And then I was already flying for a regional carrier. And so now currently I'm pretty close to flying with a major, just probably within about 3 or 4 months. And
Yeah.
I'm real excited about that. But that's been my journey and how I got to where I am today. So.
Okay. What would you say was like the most unexpected part of the whole process? Something that was different than what you were thinking going in to becoming an airline pilot?
I think, at least for now, for me, I had planned out the financial aspect of it and, where we would be at certain points in the aviation process getting to a major. And in some ways, it's gone quicker than I expected. In other ways, it's been a little slower. Of course, we had the whole pandemic thing happen, and that put everything on hold for a year, year and a half, something along
Mhm.
those lines. But the financial aspect of it, just with the anticipated pilot shortage and everything, air carriers are offering a lot more compensation. And so we're actually uh, a little ahead of where I anticipated to be at this point in time. And one of the blessings is we were able to pay off a lot of my aviation loans.
Wow,
Well, all of them actually, a lot quicker than we thought.
that's
So that was
amazing.
good. And then just the COVID as well, having the whole pandemic, being set back a year and a half, that was very unexpected.
Sure.
But it definitely showed me that in aviation anything can happen. You got the
Mhm.
highs, you got the lows. Right now we're in a high again, which is pretty awesome for pilots. But it's being able to pace yourself and mentally gearing yourself for the next potential low, if that makes sense. Just being able to see
Yeah.
how quickly things can change within the aviation field. But if you're willing to weather that, it's a great career, and I'm just really excited and blessed to be where I'm at.
Yeah, it seems like with what you're saying, it's almost like you need to have a long-term mindset about it. Like, I'm not
Yeah,
doing this for next year, I'm doing this for 10 years down the road.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, that's also, it seems like typically with promises and stuff for training, people overpromise. So you actually were a little bit underpromised on the
I
compensation.
was, yes, yes, I was under promised, and I planned for everything for the under promise and over delivered. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, yeah, that's good to hear. Very cool. Well, you talked about getting on with the airline. What, if any, experience have you had at the airline where there's maybe a crazy passenger or emergency type? Has there been anything at the airline, any kind of stories that you have for crazy passengers or things with the airplane and flying?
Yeah, well, there's several. Of course, there's always weather. Whether you're always dealing with weather and thunderstorms and snow and a wide range of stuff.
Mm.
But there's one particular story that kind of comes to mind right off the top of my head. I was flying back from somewhere. We were flying into Dallas from somewhere in the south. I don't remember where, and it was about an hour and a half flight. And about probably 20, 25 minutes into the flight, I get a call from my flight attendant. It says, "Hey, we got a passenger. She's having a seizure." So the passenger, just for whatever reason, happened to have that episode on board. And it was late at night. We're flying obviously at night, but over a lot of airports that were kind of not main airports. So if we had diverted, if we landed there, the emergency service would take just about as long to get to us and help the passengers as it would to just continue the flight on to Dallas. So for me personally, I'm thinking about a lot of different things. First of all, I'm thinking about the passenger and then my flight attendants. Thankfully, we had not only a flight attendant was a registered nurse. We had another registered nurse on board and another law enforcement personnel on board as well. I don't remember exactly who it was, but
Mhm.
they were on board, so they were helping the passenger. My first officer at the time she was a great gal. She was flying plane, which allowed me to deal with being able to talk to dispatch and being able to communicate with the flight attendants and figure out, hey, exactly what do we need to do to resolve this situation quickly. And fortunately, due to some of the medical bags, equipment we have on board, they were able to take care of the passenger fairly quickly, which allowed us to continue on and kind of assess the situation as we went along. Well, kind of make a long story short, we ended up just arriving at our destination, landing in Dallas. We ended up declaring a medical emergency, having the medical personnel meet us at the gate, and then they can effectively take care of the passenger. But one thing that really stood out to me during that whole experience was just the crew resource management that we used
Mhm.
to deal with the situation as flight attendants and then to deal with the situation safely as pilots in the cockpit to make sure we arrived at our destination, without any undue hazard or being not safe to the other passengers as well. But my flight attendants did a wonderful job. My first officer did a wonderful job. We had good communication. The dispatcher was very helpful. And it was just really neat to see how all the training that you go through, you talk about so many different scenarios and so many different possibilities and, getting your mindset for things that could potentially happen. And when it does happen, all your resources come to bear on that. and you work as an effective team to deal with the situation. So I was really proud of my crew and what they did, and the ability just to get on the ground safely and make sure passengers got to where they needed to go, but also that we, were able to give priority to that one specific passenger. So it was
Yeah,
a really, really good experience.
I don't think a lot of people realize that sometimes the pilots, while we're flying the planes, there's things like that that are so unrelated to flying that you're having to deal with, and you really become a professional at just handling situations, whatever they are.
Right. Yeah, it's a job where you have, a lot of downtime, but there's periods of intense concentration and stress that you prepare for. And those are the moments that you prepare, you plan for. Anybody can fly just normally, but those are the parts that you want to prepare for. And it's
Yeah.
through your training and redundancy and practice that you actually gain the experience and learn, hey, when something does arise, you have the confidence to deal with it.
Yeah, that's reminding me. I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today, and we were talking about pilot skill versus pilot decision-making ability. And I really don't think that pilot skill is much of an issue in the airlines or in any kind of commercial professional flying. For the most part, you don't see anything that's pilot skill. You see a decision-making deficiency, which they call human error, which you might think is a skill issue, but really it's them making bad decisions. And so we were talking about how do you get the best decision making ability. I think it's exposing yourself to as much a variety of experience as possible. What would you recommend to a student pilot who's wanting to develop that decision making ability on their way towards the airlines?
That's a great question. One of the things, like you mentioned, get as much experience as you can. I took the flight instructor route. That was route I could go. I was really disappointed that I didn't have the opportunity to go and do a lot of other flying jobs simply because I had a family and I needed to take care of them first.
Right.
So it didn't give me the broad range of experience that I would have liked to have. But I did have a lot of students as an instructor, and then a lot of other pilot friends who've done a lot of other things, such as aircraft sales, being able to pick up and drop off aircraft, doing things like for aerial photography or pipeline or whatever the case may be, like glider towing,
Mhm.
whatever it is. But doing things, even if it's short amount of time, that'll give you the experience you need to see different parts of the country, different weather patterns, different airports, different terrain features, and things like that. That would be the probably the main thing that I would recommend. If not, go to a lot of aviation meetings, go to a lot of gatherings, and talk to those pilots who have done that. Because frankly, as a pilot, and Jack, what do? We sit around, we talk about stuff that
Yeah.
happened. Oh, this is what happened to me, or that's what happened to me. And so just by listening to that, even me, I love talking with the major airline guys. If I'm sitting waiting for a flight, like if I'm deadheading or trying to commute home or something, I'm talking to another captain or a first officer at United or Delta or whoever, and just hearing some of their experiences going, hey, how did they handle this? Or what did they do for that? And
Yeah.
being able to expose yourself as much as possible to as much information and experience as you can.
Yeah.
That would be primary things.
Yeah, I love that. I completely agree. We're looking at the flight school here at Parrish Aviation at potentially adding in some glider and some tailwheel to our career program.
Wow.
Because you see, there's schools and there's people that go out and do that, but that's more on a mom and pop scale and people individually seeking that out. But I think it would be so neat if a career track flight school had, your first 10 hours are in a glider, and then you get some tailwheel time and even potentially some aerobatic time that are built into the program. So we're looking at that right now to try and, like you're talking about, improve the variety of experience for the pilots coming out of the program.
That is amazing. I would wholeheartedly, you know, support that. That is really exciting, especially you like coming from a tailwheel. One thing I noticed too was I think I had one other student as well, but the students and pilots that have tailwheel experience are actually better at the controls. They're a little more polished than like say me, who
Mhm.
started out as a tricycle type landing gear. So
Totally, yeah, it translates very, very well to tricycle
yeah.
gear. Yeah, and so actually nobody's gonna know this. Tim was my first flight instructor at ATP. I went to ATP and he was my instructor there, and I had about 30 hours logged with my grandpa and his friends before in tail with airplanes. So that is one of the reasons that we've stayed connected and that I invited Tim to be a part of the Pilot Essentials project because he's the best flight instructor I know and was a phenomenal instructor for me and still to this day is a phenomenal instructor. So if anyone's using the Pilot Essentials course, I'm sure that they will understand and agree with that.
Well, I appreciate that. I love working with you.
Yeah.
It's a blessing and an honor to do so. So
Yeah, it definitely, I think it really helped out my flight training experience a lot, starting off with just such a solid foundation. I think I would say my approach to flight training was set up in a very healthy way that helped me succeed. Having a strong knowledge foundation in the beginning and, having procedure and checklist and doing things the right way from the beginning, I think helped me a lot. What would you say to a student who's starting flight school and is kind of in that position of how can I succeed in flight school? What would be your recommendation to that person?
that's a great question. Having worked with a lot of different students, everybody's different. I can tell you one thing for me, from my personal experience too, is don't give up.
Mm,
That there's a lot of information, and a lot of times it feels like, and I'm sure you know this, and a lot of other people, but it feels like you're just standing in front of a fire hose, just being sprayed with a ton of water, just a
mhm,
ton of information and things to learn, and just all the regulations, and then just how to fly, and then how to operate in and out of specific airports. It's just a lot of information, and so I became very discouraged several times throughout my training, and then even as a flight instructor, trying to get hours and such. But it was just the point of I would get to a point where I thought I would do something and or knew something, and then something would happen. I'd be like, oh man, I didn't know that, or there's just so much information.
mhm,
But you just keep working hard at it. Keep studying, keep doing your best. Don't quit. And if you can find a great flight instructor who can see that and can try to uplift you and encourage you throughout your training, that's even better to help you with that as well. And then even gather around some friends who are maybe going through the same thing and can encourage one another and share information, ideas, and really have some accountability in that area to be able to just keep pushing forward. And don't give up. If it's hard, don't give up. Everything in life is not easy.
mm.
Something that you want is always going to be hard. So even though in aviation it feels like you may not be advancing as fast as you want or getting something as quickly, it will come. Just work hard, don't be discouraged, and continue to do your best. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, that's great advice. I would second that. The students at the school that we see here studying together in groups, they're the star pupils. They're the ones that
Yeah.
really get ahead quickly. Now, speaking of difficulty challenges with training, what was specifically your most difficult check ride and why?
My most difficult check ride was the initial CFI check ride. We did a multi-engine check ride first, or it was multi-engine CFI. So, just
Mm,
right off the bat, you got a big check ride. For me, I was worried about not knowing enough information. And I have done a lot of instruction with initial CFI students as well. And to all of them, I gave the same, bit of advice. Is like, don't worry about what you don't know necessarily. Don't freak out about, oh, hey, I got to check right next Tuesday. Look at all this stuff I don't know. Take little bits at a time. Keep studying. Don't stop studying, but don't worry about what you don't know. You're when you go on the check ride, the examiners know that you're not going to know everything. What's important is either you know how to find it if you don't know where it is, or that you're able to, look it up and say, hey, you know what? I don't quite understand that. Let me get back to you on that. And obviously, in a check ride, there's a little bit of leeway there. It's like not quite the thing where you can't just go, oh, hey, let me get back to you on that like you can a student. But the idea being is that don't freak out about the information you don't know. Study as hard as you can, work towards it, and eventually, you just have to say, I did the best I can, and take your shot at your CFI check ride. I failed my first CFI check ride on the ground portion. I was instructing. I instructed something incorrectly,
mm,
and so I failed for it. But what that did is it allowed me to go back and find my skill and say, okay, hey, where did I mess up? And then just keep
Mm.
plugging forward again, because you will hit snags, you will hit hard times, and even potentially a check ride failure, and that's okay. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It allows you to gain more experience and to keep pushing yourself forward and doing your best. So don't give up. Just don't worry about what you don't know. I mean, keep studying, but go in the
Mhm.
check ride with confidence and knowing, and confidence in your ability as a pilot and what you do know.
Yeah. Okay. That's great advice.
Sorry, that was a long-winded, but
No, that's great. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are watching this and at different phases, maybe they're interested in becoming a pilot, maybe they're currently a student, maybe they're a CFI or an airline pilot, and I think that, different portions of this may be super valuable to all of them. Um, Let's see here. Oh, okay. This was a question that someone asked me. This is somebody who's interested in coming to our school and becoming an airline pilot, but he has a hesitation. He's concerned about work-life balance as an airline pilot. So could you speak to that, and just give kind of an honest, real picture of what that looks like or can look like?
sure, yeah, that's a very good question. It's something I'm not gonna lie, something I struggle with a little bit too. So for the most part, at a regional airline, a major airline, you are gone 3, 4 days, and then home 2 to 3 days, depending on the schedule. Excuse me. So it is difficult to juggle that work life balance. However, one thing that I have done, that I've tried to do anyway, and my wife, I have a very supportive wife, and she is amazing. I could not have done this without her. And first of all, that would be, make sure that if you do have a partner, that they are on board with this, because if they're not on board, you're not going to have the support, and it's going to be very, very difficult for both of you. So, make sure you have a partner that's supportive. Second of all, if you have a family like me, we have 3 children.
Mhm.
And what I was able to do is connect with them by bringing a computer, or, we're so grateful to have FaceTime today, or whatever the case may be. And, my kids like to play computer games. So I got a gaming laptop, and
Oh my goodness,
I
that
would go to
is
the
so
hotel.
sweet.
Yeah, and I would log in and I play with them, and
Wow.
just to have that connection, of course it doesn't always happen all the time, but if I can do that, or at least talk to them a couple times a week or whatever, it helps a lot with trying to be involved with their lives as well. And so it's hard. It's not easy. I don't like being in a hotel 3 days a week, three
Yeah.
nights a week. It's hard. I like my own bed, but if you could have the support and then be able to use the technology and such we have today to connect with those that you love and your family, then it makes it a lot easier to be able to do so. That would be my big thing with that, is just, yeah, everything's different for every individual, how you balance that work and home life. But for me, it was connecting through gaming and online stuff with my kids, and then with my wife, FaceTiming and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. I love how intentional that is. I've never heard of anybody that's done that. That's such a good way to connect and be involved with your kids even while you're gone. Because I mean, growing up, my dad is an airline pilot and was my whole life. And, you know, you maybe talk to him on the phone for 5 minutes on a trip,
right.
and he's just gone when he's gone. And he was still our soccer coach and was very involved. But I love that with technology and gaming and streaming now, you can actually play games with your kids while you're in a
Yep.
hotel. That's really
Yep.
cool. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, for anyone, I guess, that does not have kids yet, if you do have a significant other, when I was at the airlines, my wife did come with me on trips quite a bit. She loved to do that, and again, was very supportive, just like your wife. And so if you have a spouse that's willing to do that, or even kids, once they're old enough, they could travel with you. They just need to be able to be old enough to be in the
Yep.
back on their own. And
Yep.
one of my
Yeah.
favorite times, I got to go with my dad to Cancun on one of his trips once I was a little bit older and stay on the beach with him there. That was pretty great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Ooh, okay. Fun kind of current events question. What do you
Ooh.
think about electric powered airplanes? Do you think that that is going to take? Do you think that we'll see it in flight training versus airline? And what kind of application, or do you think it'll take it all?
That is a really good question. I I do have my thoughts on that. I don't know how helpful they are or whatever. I mean, I guess I could potentially see electric aircraft in the future, definitely a very long time before they're ever introduced into the commercial world. The benefits versus the cost. I mean, something as simple as you thinking about, just weight of the aircraft. I mean,
Mhm.
that's that's a lot. It's and then the issue of recharging, or maybe so as far as recreational, I could maybe see something going that direction, but as far as airlines, I really don't think that's going to take hold for a very, very long time. That, and kind of a little bit, but paralleling the idea that you have a single pilot cockpit where, trying to take both the captain and first officer, at least just have one pilot instead of two. I The union is really fighting things like that, for safety reasons. And so I think, it'll be a while before we see some sort of electrical mass produced aircraft available for the general public.
Yeah.
I just think the cost benefit is just too great at this point in time. So,
Yeah, yeah. I saw there was one that's been released recently for flight training. I don't know if you saw, I don't know the manufacturer or anything, but I looked into it because it's very interesting, and if it is viable, it'd be awesome to be one of the first schools to do it. But from what I saw, it did not seem like the product was yet viable. I think the flight time was like somewhere between 30 minutes to an hour for flight time for range, and then it would take like 2 hours to recharge between flights, which that just does not work for an operation where you're trying to be efficient and planes in the sky all day. So not
right.
not there yet.
Yeah, it'll be a while. Yeah.
Hmm. It is cool to see that people are pushing it forward. Oh, you know what? I know who it was. Textron just bought that company that was doing it, and they
Oh,
made it part of their E division, their electric division. So now some
okay.
serious money's going into it, where hopefully it develops a little quicker.
Yeah, no, well, that'd be great. Yeah, it'd be kind of fun to see that type of thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
I'll never get rid of the champ, the old school with the lawnmower in
Yes,
there.
yes. The old school is great if you really want to learn basics. I was like you, I learned on a six pack and
Mhm.
flew, just my first cross country solo, all I had was a paper mat, a paper chart, and VR. That was it.
Yeah.
And I
Hey,
was
your training for me saved my butt with that. I was flying in the champ, the Aranca champion, from Phoenix to Dallas. Did I ever tell you how my iPad flew out the window?
you mentioned you lost it, but you didn't mention how.
Yeah, so I was navigating with ForeFlight on my iPad, and the DPE scenario where they want you to use paper charts, that's like,
Right.
come on, that's not gonna happen. It happened to me, and my window, it's a slide window, it was open, and it was just sitting on my leg. I didn't have like a wraparound Velcro thing or anything, and I hit a bump of turbulence, and it just pooped right out the window. And my initial
Oh,
response, like I dove after it as if I'm gonna catch it or something, but
right.
I did check to make sure that where it landed, nothing was, it landed in an open field and probably got destroyed. But I
Wow.
had a paper chart with me, and that was all I had, and a compass to continue navigating. And it was, actually really fun to practice. And well, it wasn't a problem. It was easy enough. But uh,
Right.
it's like technology could fail. I know for the most part we have backups and redundancies and stuff, but it's nice to at least know that you can do it with a compass and a
Wow.
map.
That's incredible. I didn't know that. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry, man. Oh, thinking all
Uh,
that money goes out the window. Phew. But yeah.
yeah,
Well, good.
yeah,
That's great. I'm glad you were able to experience that. Not the loss, but the backup. So.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, my final question, who was your favorite student you ever had, and why was it me? No, I'm kidding.
Actually, well, okay, that's the truth. Actually, you were my favorite student. And I think I actually have a little list of, I probably shouldn't say this, but I've got a list of my best student, my worst student, my funniest student, my
Oh yeah.
my all these little things. This is my students, right? But no, actually, Jack, as you actually were my best student.
Oh
I
wow.
love teaching you. And the reason why I loved instructing you, though, I look forward to our lessons together, was because you were prepared. You came prepared. Yeah,
Mm,
you were ready for the lesson. Not only that, but you were ready to learn. Whatever we had to work on, or whatever we had to deal with that day. And oh, I'll have to share something too with you. I don't know if you remember this or not, but anyway, you were just very prepared, and you worked hard, and that just really motivated me. And it was, I think one thing that really hit me too is because you were just so young at the time. And as a flight instructor, you see a wide range of ages as students, and you
Mhm.
kind of look at these ages and you see what goes on, and you're like, oh, okay, I know what to expect. But you coming in with being prepared and ready and working hard at your age was just real exciting and encouraging to me. So
Yeah.
that was why. Do you remember I actually had our semi first emergency with you. We were doing training south, and our alternator light came on. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it was
I
with
taught
you.
off of that the other day. We
Oh, did
had
you really?
a drain on a system in one of our planes, and
Yeah.
they ended up, having to go through the process. And so yeah, one of our instructors and students had to handle the same exact thing. And well,
Wow.
I experienced that when I went through flight training as well, and it's very helpful learning experience. Not that we
Yeah.
ever desire and we avoid as much as we can for anything like that to happen,
Right.
but every now and then
Yeah.
equipment fails, and you gotta,
Yeah, it was like one of our very first flights. We hadn't even really talked about systems or anything yet. And I remember the first question you asked me was, you looked at me and you said, "Hey, we're going to lose the engine." And I was so grateful, at that point in time, that I had studied systems at least to a certain point. It's like I was
yeah.
able to answer confidently, "No, we're going to be fine."
Yeah, yeah.
And so, that just things like that, you prepare and you plan and you study and practice for little moments like that. So when they
Mhm.
do pop up, you can be prepared for those and deal with them properly. It's kind of exciting. You went back and the maintenance guy was like, "Yeah, look, the cord broke." You're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
okay."
That's
It
exactly
does
what
happen.
happened in our aircraft with this one. There was a cord and they had to go in and
And
replace the
it
cord.
snapped. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yes. So you were my best student. I enjoyed
Oh, well,
teaching
thank you.
you.
I wasn't I wasn't
Yeah.
expecting that answer. Well, I mean, I do remember going through flight training, and it was something that's a huge part of what I remember through the process was coming. I think you'd recommended this, but to come prepared with questions for my studying. So
Yes.
we would go over lessons, I would go home, study, write down 3 to 5 questions and bring those to you. And that is my advice to anyone that is a student pilot. Study on your own time and write down questions and bring them to your instructor, because sometimes the instructors, they've got 5 students, they may not know every single thing that they've taught you. Going through a syllabus definitely helps with that, but even so, there's a lot of knowledge to learn, so coming with questions is going to help to cover those deficiencies, definitely. And I think that period of time, because like you said, I was young. I was coming out of high school where I almost failed out of high school. It got, I got through by the skin of my teeth. I had a nice teacher. And so coming out of that and then going into flight training, I think that process helped me kind of believe in myself and the things I can do. And now, I mean, running a school at 27, a lot of people are like, "Are you the owner? Is your dad like like having confidence to do something that is not the most common at a younger age." So
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm just so excited. I'm just so blessed and honored that you even asked me to help out with your curriculum and such. And it's just an honor for me. It's exciting to see, especially, I've actually flown with several of my students in the airlines as well. And it's really exciting to see, they go from, you go from student and instructor to peers, and you work together within the cockpit, and you both have the same objective. You know your material, and you trust them because
mhm.
you've seen them and you've seen them grow, and it's really exciting just to experience that.